What is up, YouTube? My name is Adam. Oh, no, we have a delay. All right, what is up, YouTube? My name is Adam. I wanted to welcome you to episode 2 of Built from Nothing. For those of you that are brand new, I'm documenting my journey to redefine the sales industry. That is my mission, to do this through a few different ways, and I will discuss that with you today really quickly. But more or less, yeah, my mission is to redefine the sales space through systematic empowerment, creating a new level of or a new standard of leadership, culture, and execution, one business at a time. And we're going to be doing that in a few different ways by helping people in the sales space get better, learn better, and then helping businesses better treat their staff members, better implement systems. That way, they actually are doing what's necessary to scale their businesses rather than taking it out on the team members themselves. So, we're going to be going through a variety of topics throughout the weeks, and I'm going to be live streaming every Monday through Friday a different topic and getting to build this with you guys. So, what I want from you, if you're new here or you're just tuning in, to leave in a comment for me. What do you want to get out of this? What do you want to get out of this documentation? Do you want sales trainings? Do you want live engine build outs for clients? Do you want to see system breakdowns? Like if you're in the sales industry, whether you're a rep or whether you're a business owner looking to grow your business or scale or fix some issues that are commonly occurring in your business, what do you want to see from me and my company as we go through this journey? So the topic of today that I want to go through with you guys is the two things that we need to understand if we're going to create not good, but great systems. And first one I'm going to go through with you guys. Actually, let me lower this a little bit. Yeah, so for great systems, the first one I want to go through is, let's see, here we go. First is going to be, what is the actual makeup of a system, and something that I like to refer to as an engine. So I'm going to build this out almost in like a pyramid for you guys. And this pyramid is made up of 3 parts. So at the top, you have people, process, and your platform. And most of the time, most companies have one of these 3. Not all 3, maybe 1 or 2, depending on the scenario, but most of the time it's one of these 3. But in order to have a great system, you need to congruently have all 3 of this pyramid. And I'll break it down for you in terms of what exactly each means. So people is broken up by 2 things: responsibility, expectations. So expectations, that's going to be your clear communication of roles, goals, and what success looks like by the individual rep as the company. People thrive when they know what's expected of them. And then secondarily, responsibility, that's empowering individuals to own their tasks and be accountable for outcomes, ensuring that they're in alignment, and there's trust. It's very important. And if we go down to process, that's your SOPs, how things are done are in 2 areas. So you have, are they repeatable? And then results. Now, repeatable is a strong process that is scalable, consistent, enabling predictable outcomes without improvisation, more or less. It's a concrete structure. And then results, that's the ultimate measure of any process. When done right, it drives the desired outcome efficiently and effectively at its baseline, which baseline is just standard operations. And then if we were going down the platform, you have enablement and scalability. Excuse the handwriting and the spelling. But if we were to go to enablement, enablement is the platform empowers people and processes, providing a few things: tools, integrations, systems, automations, reporting, and necessary that is necessary to execute tasks as effectively as possible. It bridges the gap between human effort and system efficiency. And then now scalability is a well-designed platform is going to grow with the business, accommodating increased complexity, more users, more data without losing effectiveness. So when you get to that point where you're ready to scale, we need to have everything locked in before we 10x the business. Otherwise, we're going to have bottlenecks pour on top of each other. It ensures the business remains in high velocity as demand evolves. So to break this down for you, where's my there we go. So to break this down a little bit farther, this creates one thing. This is how we create momentum in movement within a company. Now, do we know the definition of momentum? I'll put it together for you. So let's take people is going to be your mass. Process is going to be your multiplier. And then platform is going to be your velocity. And that equals momentum. And that is how we apply force and momentum to a company so that we can generate more results. This is the way you need to be thinking of things. So secondary, I'm going to erase this for us. Now, second, we need to understand in terms of great system makeup is why businesses on average fail 50% of the time when they're implementing systems. So number two, why businesses fail. Now, businesses fail on average 50 to 70% of the time, especially when we reach this point of scaling. It's going to come down to a few things, especially when it's involving CRMs, systems, and we'll go in order. So at the top, we're going to have lack of clear objectives. That's at the top, causing 29% of businesses to fail. You know why? Because there's no clear plan. People are just throwing things into the mix, expecting something to stick and something to work. You need to understand, why are we implementing it? What is the result we're trying to get? Did we get the result? Are we auditing? Are we adapting? Are we fixing? Are we changing? And then next one is going to be poor adoption. That takes into account 22%. So adoption within a company is going to be a few things. That's going to be where your team is actually trained in understanding what is happening with the new systems and processes that are being put into place. Like, imagine you install a brand new CRM system and then expect your reps to automatically understand how to use it, work it perfectly, and get success from it. You can't expect them to be able to do that. That's why this is very high. Number three is going to be data management or lack thereof. And that's going to take into account of 18% of why businesses fail. Now, lack thereof, that's everything top down: your ad spend, your metrics on your sales team, like your CAC, your LTV to CAC ratio, everything from total leads, total cost per lead, total amount of booked calls, et cetera, closing percentages, et cetera. If you don't understand those numbers, then that's going to compound into, well, you don't know what's broken if you can't see it. And then you can't make the necessary changes. You can't make the necessary improvements on the system to be able to move in the necessary direction that you need to. And then number 4, lack of executive support. And this comes down to people in the C-suite, this depending on the size of the company, you're the owners that are involved that are unwilling to step up and get their hand dirty, that will just yell at you all day long to do the work, but won't actually do the work themselves. So when there's a lack of accountability hot from the top of the food chain down, that's going to create internal chaos. It's going to create lack of discipline. It's going to create lack of structure, and then your team is going to fall apart. And this takes into account 17%. Now, if we were to keep going, I could obviously explain all of them, but we also have overcomplication of features, integration problems, inadequate training, resistance to change, customization issues, and that's anywhere from 15 to 8% of probability as to why businesses fail. So going to the top down, we want to avoid this, which is why we will need to have a clear objective for what we're implementing and why we're implementing it. We need to have proper training procedures put into place as to why we're doing something and how we can actually train our team members on what's being put into place, have the proper training structures, data collection and put in place. That way we can figure out what's the bottlenecks, where's the leaks, and how we can plug them. That way we're not leaking revenue month over month over month. And then same going down with actual support from the top down. We need the top of the food chain. We need the CEO, et cetera, depending on the size of the company, the C-suite, people that started the business, understand the business, heavily involved, and not relying everything on the sales reps. And this breaks down to a few different things. So I'm going to break this into 3 sections. So business fail because of a few reasons. Number 1, failure to plan. Which comes down to a lack of a clear objective. Again, lack of clear objective, team support, lack of alignment, overcomplication. Number 2, it's going to be poor execution. It's going to be everything from integration problems, customized issues, lack of alignment to business processes, failure to adopt. And then that's going to take us to number 3, which is failure to adopt. Poor user adaptation, inadequate training procedures for staff members, resistance to change from the staff members because of said steps above. And again, that just boils down to all of the issues that take us up here. Now we can take this a little bit further. If we were to go into the failure to plan, the number 1 reason projects fail is a lack of planning. And that might sound simple, but the reality of it is most teams jump straight into execution without a clear objective, without team alignment or realistic strategy. They overcomplicate things unnecessarily. Like, think about building your dream house. Instead of designing a blueprint with every detail, materials, timeline, milestones, clear responsibilities, and resources, you just grab some tools and start hammering away. What's the result? Massive cost outruns unmet needs, and or worse, you never finish it at all. So without a solid plan, the likelihood of success is slim to none. And like, if we were to look at poor execution, like, interestingly, poor execution is one of the least common in the failure scenario, taking up around 12%. And why? That's because if you have a clear plan with well-defined objectives, accountability, milestones, execution it becomes far simpler. However, execution can falter due to inexperience or lack of knowledge on how to properly leverage the platforms, tools, and systems, etc., that you're working with. Um, Imagine you've created like a flawless, again, the house example, created a flawless blueprint for your dream house, but instead of hiring an experienced contractor, you decide to go DIY or hand it off to overconfident uncle who performs it faster and cheaper. There's two scenarios of things that could happen. Scenario A, the project gets done, but it takes 10 times the time, 10x the time, energy, and budget to achieve only half the result. Or you have scenario B, the project falls apart midway, and then you have to call in professionals to fix the mess and complete it properly. Both scenarios are costly, frustrating, and completely avoidable. Which takes me to number three, again, failure to adopt. A big heavy hitter. Both of these are around the 42 to 46% into why businesses fail. So this is the silent killer on most projects. One of the most overlooked steps in the system implementation. Even when companies plan well and execute flawlessly, they often fail to ensure a well thought out process adoption process. And here's what happens: the new system is implemented, but the team doesn't fully understand it, trust it, or use it as intended. So without proper training, support, and integration into their day to day, the system becomes a high tech paperweight, costing you time, money, and missed opportunities. And the teams become more and more likely included with the teams, and more than likely you included will go back to improvisation within 30 to 60 days because you're just getting frustrated time over time over time. So this is why we create something called engines, and I'm going to break that down for you. So I'll say there's a few different key pieces to an engine. So there's an input, a decision, and an output. And we break it up this way because we want to move things through systematically and efficiently. So let me break this down for you. So you have your input. You have your processes. Now we're going to get to the halfway point where we hit a decision, or we call it a gate. So every engine will have an input where whether a lead comes into a system, whether a lead is booked on a discovery call, handed off to a closer, whether a closer closes a deal and hands off the lead to the CS team, input into a process. And then every engine is going to have multiple key processes, but they're going to go through these processes, and then they're going to get to a point where there's a decision that needs to be made, which we call a phase gate, which is where we cannot go back and make changes. We can only make a decision and move forward with the process. So if we were to take this down here, processes again, which is going to take us to output. And then again, every engine is going to have a desired or designated output. So the way this process goes is you're going to have multiple gates or decision points throughout the process. Every engine will have multiple processes within its own engine, and every engine will have an input and an output. So throughout these processes, these are more or less, we want to understand who is behind these. Whose responsibility is it in this part of the process? So as an example, in our setter engine, lead comes into the process. Now we're in the process, the lead is delegated to a setter. What is the seller's responsibility at this point in the process? And the process is What is the decision they need to be making? Is it a qualified lead or an unqualified lead? Are they booking them on an appointment? If they're booking them on the appointment, the setter is making a process right here, performing the output, which is booking them on a call, handing them off to closer. So it's called box ownership. So box owners are responsible for carrying out the specific processes or objectives marked on your engine, or it could be an engine owner. So someone that is responsible for maintaining results, training, and managing personnel. So say you have a sales director responsible for, if we were talking about the setter engine, the entire engine and everything that goes on in this process. So next part is going to be requirements, assets, playbooks, etc. So first we meet with each box owner. So if we're going to build this out, so after we get to that point where we have the initial framework, we meet with each box owner after the initial all-in-one process is completed for review of the process, gather all current steps, assets, etc. And under each box, we need to make a list of all the essential assets, tools, tasks, etc. Highlight each of them with the coordinator, red, yellow, green. What are the assets? Who are they for? What are they done by? And what are we looking to get out of them? And then second, we meet with the engine owner. So if this is the setter engine, we're meeting with the sales director to confirm the process, make sure nothing is missing, and then review and confirm proper color coordination, red, yellow, green, etc., depending on how you structure your playbook before it's actually implemented into the process. And then same goes out for like a list of steps. So what is occurring from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, etc., etc. What are the tools that are being used? What are the assets that are being used? What are the steps in order? And how are we color coordinating them so that it's understood appropriately? Now, let me give you an example of what this would look like. Now, let's take our setter engine again as an example, and we'll draw it out for you. So we have input up here. Input is going to be leads, where the leads go in. Now, process number one, we'll have outbound prospecting. Who is in charge of this? This is the outbound setter. We'll move on to process number two in this particular engine, which is going to be scheduling discovery calls if you have a two-step call process. And whose responsibility is that? That's an outbound setter's job. So say we have a third process in the system, we're going to come down here, which is appointment confirmation. So they're booked the call. Now it's going to be their responsibility to confirm the call prior to getting on that call with the closer. So that's third process. Again, responsibility is by the outbound setter. So we're mapping this whole thing out. And then now we've reached a decision or a gate, which is, did they show up? Yes or no are the options. And then that'll create their own variations of processes. So if it's a no, what does their rebooking process look like? That's an extension of this engine, whether you have a show rate engine, you have a reactivation engine, or anything else that's a section of this. So pretty much this is yes or no. And then we're going to move on to the next process in this engine, which is, again, qualification. From discovery call to sales call. responsibility, inbound setter. Now, same responsibility. We're going to come down here, continue the engine. We have another point in the system where we have to then make a decision. Are they qualified? Yes or no. And now, next piece of the process is booking the closing call. In responsibility, inbound setter. And then from there, we have our output. So as we travel, we're having our inputs where the leads come in. We're having processes throughout and who this responsibility is at. Traveling through to points where there needs to be decisions or outcome decisions, branching out into yes or no options. And what happens to the lead? Do they need to go back into the process? Can they continue forward? And then following through to the point of closing call. This is a 2-call close process. And then having an output, which is they were booked on a call. Now we're transitioning out of, which is the setter engine here. And now we've reached the closer engine, which is going to create another variability of steps, processes, decisions, and outputs. And again, same thought process. Whose responsibility are those processes? What are the decisions that need to be made? What steps do the leads need to go through? What is the outcome we're looking for? And then where are we placing those opportunities? So as an example, this is our setter engine. Our one metric, which holds our engine productivity, accountability, and sales director, which is going to be lead to closing call booked percentage, overall and individual per rep, because we need to know both, because that helps us track performance in the individual as well as the entire team. Or if you have pod structures, this can be really important. Or if outbound setters only prospect and do not take any calls, if you have a 1-call close opportunity where there's no discovery calls involved, it's going to be lead discovery call booked percentage, overall and individual per rep. Those are metrics that we need to be tracking. And then to keep going, let's say we have our setter engine as well going through. So metric number 1, lead to closing call booked. 3 other metrics that we hold our setters accountable by: number of dials overall and by rep, number of sets overall and by rep. And then we're also going to have show rate overall and by rep. And we need to have both, because again, as we split departments, as we have pod structures that are built out and enabled between groups, these are very, very important. And then another metric for tracking velocity within an engine, which is going to be how effective is it? Average time from lead delegation to call being scheduled, overall by rep, and if you can, by source. That's really, really important, because that'll help you understand which reps are performing the quickest and the most, and then which lead source is performing the best and the most, so you have an idea of ad spend that needs to be where you can target more. And that's really important. So this is I'll say a rough diagram of what this should look like. You would use a system or a process to wireframe this out. I like whimsical. I used it in my last live stream to break down the 5 lead points, or the 5 lead points, which are really, really important as you build out your engines, because you want to build them around those points, because that's how you save yourself ad dollars. That's how you save yourself lost deals. And I'll briefly explain them again for those of you that are new, because these are really important, especially as you're building out teams and the setter engines more specifically. But this will be really important as you design any engine, whether you're on the setter side, whether you're on the closer side, whether you're on the CS team and fulfillment, or so on and so forth. You're going to have inputs, you're going to have processes, you're going to have decisions that need to be made, and you're going to have a desired outcome for each of those, which are really, really important. So we were to break down all 5 points prior to building out a system. We're going to be looking at your entry points, your drop-off points, your pass-off points, your exit points, and your re-entry points. Rough handwriting. But for the sake of the example, and I'll go through it again really quickly, an entry point, an example of that would be, okay, your lead just opted into a funnel, just came into the CRM and was just populated through one of our ads, clicked the link, downloaded a lead magnet, et cetera, et cetera. This kicks off the initial process. So this is going to be your input, like I was just going through when we were designing our setter engine. Let's, as an example, a drop-off point, say a lead enters the system, has gone through lead delegation, speed to lead quality control. Now they're in the outbound prospecting portion, and they're actually being managed by the setting team. Say a lead is in there, we've called them every day for the last 14, 15 days. We've sent them multiple emails, never opened any of our copy. There's a time decay that can be systematically applied to those leads, meaning after X amount of time, after X amount of activity has not been had by this lead, the lead falls out of our system and ends up back into a reactivation engine, which we can get into at another time, but it's an attempt to bring that lead back to life, which is, so it's going to, this is going to be our main system. So the lead's going to keep going, they time decay, and then they're going to drop out of the system and then go back into another timeline, which this is for reactivation. So the goal is to put them on this timeline, get them to reactivate in a spike in activity. We'll call that a spike, and then put them right back in the system, right back in the setter's hands. Because that's a reactivated lead, which again, you can track all that depending on your system that you're using. But that's how you command those portions of lead flow. Now, pass-off points, this is going to be a big part of output portion of the engine. So more or less a pass-off point is any point in the system where you're handing off responsibility of the lead. So if a setter has booked a closing call and is now giving that lead and its responsibility to the closer, that's a pass-off point, meaning it's now the closer's responsibility to handle this lead with care and make sure the necessary steps are taken so that they show up on the call. Now, this could also be tied to reentry, which I'll get to, but that's a pass off. It's more or less the responsibility of the lead being handed off from one department to another, or one individual or rep to another. Same thing could happen. Say a lead enters the system, goes through lead delegation, does not pass speed the lead, meaning the rep did not reach out to that lead as quick as they should have. The lead goes back through lead delegation and is resent to another rep. That's a pass-off point. If the responsibility is being changed from one setter to another due to lack of speed to lead, lack of responsibility, or taking over and commanding their lead volume. So next is going to take you to exit points. So an exit point could be a few different things. This is more or less your dead leads. or maybe not so much dead leads, but I would say partially dead leads. So as an example, say we'll look at the timeline again. So say this is our straight line system funnel right here. This is booked on, this is enter the system, pay as an example. They go through time decay and they still don't hit, they drop down to the reactivation portion where we want to get a spike in activity. They still don't achieve the goal that we have for them and the spike of activity. At this point, they hit an exit point and reach the dead pool, because even after they've passed out of portion one of the system and entered portion two where there was an attempt to reactivate, we're not going to waste our time on those leads anymore. So they're going to go to the dead pool. Now, an exit point could also be, say you call someone, they're on the do not call list, there's bad data, or there's no way to physically contact the lead. That's an exit point. You're going to take that lead out because there's no point of calling the lead that's complaining about do not call list or there's bad data behind it. So that's another example. And then finally, re-entry points, which again tied to exits. So say, let me see. Yeah, again, same with pass off and drop offs. Say we go through the system, lead enters the system here, goes through, drops down due to lack of activity, but there's a spike in activity. Here, let's call that a spike. So they open 3 emails, click a link, download another lead magnet. They're going to re-enter the initial system. So that's a re-entry point based on activity. And then they're going to go through the same processes over and over again as if they were a brand new lead. Lead delegation, speed to lead by the rep. Rep's going to go through prospecting and lead management so that they can get them on a booked call. And then they're going to go through the rest of the system down to buy. Those are your 5 lead points, and you want to have these really understood. That is not a star. Here we go. Really understood well as you're building out your engines and your wireframes before you even consider testing anything and implementing these in the systems. So I hope that was helpful, this little presentation that I wanted to go through with you today. This is really important because at the end of the day, a lot of what I do is built by going in depth with great systems, because at the end of the day, I'll stand by this, and I posted something about it recently, which was mediocre sales reps with prolific systems will always outperform any day of the week great salespeople with poor systems. So we need something that will always perform no matter who is on